My name is Princess, and I am here to do some couch surfing. I'm starting a podcast called Couch Surfing, and it's very exciting. It's a new project that I've designed and established, and I'm so excited to just be here because the reason I created this in the first place is because a lot of people would ask me about my experience and through adoption. And I was adopted for many years. I was a foster kid. First of all, I think it's very important to actually differentiate between those two statements. Did you know that adoption is when you fully get taken by a family and your whole surname changes, for example? So I'd be Princess Veyes, for example. And if you're a foster kid, you actually don't change your surname. That's the first thing. But also, most foster contracts come with accessibility to your biological family. So anyway, with that being said, now that I've dropped a whole lot of information, this podcast is called Couch Surfing because we're about to go through a lot of information and a lot of people's couches just to hear their experience. Mine is about adoption, and I will delve into that later. But other people will be talking about different experiences in their own lives, and I'm very excited for you guys to see those conversations. The first three, just to navigate, my brother will be speaking about his experience being in the family that adopted kids and how that conversation went. A friend of mine is going to be talking about CP. She has a child who's got CP. And another friend of mine is going to be talking about depression, anxiety, and working through those emotions. With that being said, it's going to be a great experience. I hope you guys are going to stick with me till the very end. That's not the end of our conversations. This is just the beginning. I have other guests that are lined up about other conversations, and there'll be tears. I can definitely promise that there'll be tears. There'll be times where it gets very emotional because I certainly don't want anyone to live here without leaving something behind, if you get what I'm saying. So one of the first things I need to say is that when somebody gets up from this couch, they leave something behind. There's something that we get into from the beginning of this episode to the very end that we leave behind. And then going from the minute that you get up from this couch, there are new developments, there are new ways, new breakthroughs that we'll be delving into as well. And so those are the two main things that I definitely want to reach with my audience. And I also hope that you guys just find a community. I found a lot of people feel lonely until they know there's someone out there who's like them. So relate to me. Write in the comments, Princess, I was adopted and this was my experience. Princess, I am a foster kid. This is my experience. The other day I was talking to someone and they said to me, a friend of mine adopted a kid and they called the child a devil child. And I laughed a bit, and I laugh at that because I laugh a lot through my pain. That's who I've been my whole entire life. This is why I am who I am today. And I can sit here in front of you guys and be open. And I just felt, one, I don't know how old that child was, but I can definitely attest to the fact that no one is a devil child. Someone has been through something, and people have made decisions that impacted your life and that make you react in certain ways. If I stand on your toe, you're going to be angry at me, right? And imagine the next person who experienced that angry person. It's a domino effect. And that's the life that we live in. This is the world and so forth. So I felt a little frustrated, but also the questions that came with adoption. Hey, you were adopted. How does that work? Oh, when I was younger, people would always just get surprised that I was with white parents. You walk into a space and somebody and you're like, oh, I'm looking for my mom. And of course, naturally, everyone's looking for a black mom. Oh, okay, where's your mom? And then you point to a white lady and it's like, oh. And then the reaction that came after that. The way people treated you, the way people handled themselves around you. It was almost like you had a disability without having a disability. You were a special kid without being a special kid. Even at school, like the year would go on, and then the minute we hit like parent-teacher meetings, then it's like, oh, Princess, your parents came through last night, and you're like, yeah, they did. And then you get treated differently even in front of your classmates, and your classmates themselves begin to treat you differently. Anyway, with that being said, I really hope that a lot of people find communities that we can dive into these conversations, we can talk about it and get excited. It gets exciting. I get excited talking about this. Couch surfing is so exciting to me because I really hope you receive the information that you need. I just want to get into my adoption story a little bit, just explain about who I am, and then I will definitely do a part 2 where I will fully dive into a lot of the topics that I'm about to open now. And definitely one of the things I want to talk about is, first of all, I was born and bred into my family, if that makes sense, my biological family. And then a certain incident took place that took me out of my home completely. And I went into different homes. Actually, the first thing I hit was first of all, somebody took me in, and it was almost like a charity thing. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I can take Princess and I can look after her. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you know. And as time goes by, people either realize, oh, maybe I wasn't quite ready to be a parent, or they like, oh, okay, it's not for me now, or it's for me later. But now you've made the decision to take in the person. Now what? You know, this person's here. They live. They eat every day. They you know, they have their routine, and you've got to get into it. So that was the first incident, and then I went into something called a safe house. So a lot of people don't even know what safe houses are. Safe houses are where people come. So let's say if you have like major traumatic experiences, your parent was killed in front of you, you were raped, you were neglected as a baby, all those big cases, then they have something called a safe house where you can actually, safe houses is like a foster house, but except safe houses are more legible to let somebody adopt a kid, if that makes sense. But they're also very protected. So nobody, even your biological family, can't even go into safe houses because that's how deep the case is in many cases. So I went into a safe house, which I lived with like 4 other girls. And that was an experience on its own. I actually bumped into one of them like the other day, and just seeing her grow as a person. But even then, like those decisions were made, and they were out of my control. I was then in a safe house, and then after which I went back to the lady I was with before. So so this is like a back and forth now. You know, like, oh, this person's not happy with you. You go there, and then I've just decided, no, you go back. You know, and it's like, this is my life. And at this stage, I think I was in grade 6, 7. So I'm old enough to understand this is happening to me. And even in safe houses, people have their chums. Like, these girls have been together for a certain amount of years, you know, and people are connecting, and you like there, and you like the extra kid. And then when you come in and out like that, you become the extra kid, literally, you know. And then when I went back, then eventually the lady that I was with before she left, she gave me over to this big institution that had like different foster families, and the institution worked as, you had either the foster parents, which were 2, and then their own kids, which were 2, and then they were allowed to have like 4 other kids. The initial thought was that you were supposed to have 6 in the house completely. Over the years, that really got out of hand, and it ended up being like 9 kids sometimes, and 10 kids, and it grew and grew and grew. The first family that I lived with there, so interesting actually. I was introduced to this black couple, very nice, sweet black couple. But as I arrived, it was the end of their term. So I didn't even live with them for like a proper year. I think I lived with them for like a good 2 months, 3 months. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, no, it's the end of their term. There's new parents coming. Now you've got to get used to new people. I just arrived. I'm new. I'm getting into this family. And these people already live together, and they've lived together for years. And now I've got to move into the next family. And now you're sitting there and you're like, okay, fine. You're a kid still, you know, you're not realizing the emotional impact that's happening on you in that moment. So then within the next couple of months, we get introduced to this other family. And what I can attest to is that the next family, yes, I lived with them for a lot of the years compared to everyone else that had built up for those years. So I lived with those people for a good 4 years, I think, which was the most stable. Imagine, throughout my good, maybe from 7 years old all the way through to my 28th year, which is how old I am today, that's the most stable family I had, was a good 4 years. After the 4 years, they decided, not that they decided, but their daughter had an emotional breakdown, and she couldn't handle the fact that a new girl had arrived, and she felt like she was being replaced with her dad and her family and her mom and her family. Like, she just felt like this little girl's replacing all her memories and so forth. So if you ever are going to adopt, I highly suggest you go through maybe even emotional intelligence tests. See if your kids are really ready. Maybe test it out for a longer season than just, 2 weekends. Really test out whether or not your family can handle that type of strain, because yes, in the beginning it was all fun and games until that happened, and then that broke. This girl didn't even want me saying that I was her sister. And then she changed the next rule that came, which I'm going to dive into why it's so personal and so deep, and I might actually just cry for this one. But the next rule that came after that, she was still not happy, still not satisfied, was that she felt we shouldn't call her mom and dad mom and dad. I am in high school at this point. I think I'm in grade 8. And she says she doesn't want us to call her mom and dad. But here's the twist. So there was 4 of us, right? Me and my brother. And then there was the 2 younger siblings. The 2 younger siblings could call their mom and dad. But us older kids were not allowed. Which makes it interesting because when you bring over a friend, this is very fun. Bring over a friend on a Friday, they're coming for a sleepover. Hi everyone, this is my aunt and uncle so-and-so. And then my younger siblings come through and they're like, oh, mom and dad. Now, my friends get to a point where in school, they're like, Princess, I don't mean to be rude, but why do you call them aunt and uncle and these people call them mom and dad? And I laugh, but it's really painful to realize till today, I can't call another woman. Even when I met my biological mother in I was just finishing, so it must have been 2015. I met my biological mother much later on in life. I still couldn't call her mom until the day she died, 2019, because they had ruined the word mom for me. That's how much it meant to me, though, as a person. That's the first thing we need to realize. So breaking that barrier in the first place. So even when I did get like the next foster family, so yes, after about 4 years, they left because of many emotional turmoils. And it came to their term. And as I arrived to the next family, which I knew them, they were like our neighbors, actually. But because we lived in in one set of grounds, they were like our neighbors. But when you actually go and join somebody else's family, that friendship automatically cuts straight. They can be your best friend, but and it makes sense, you're breaking my dynamic too. I've been living like this with these people. You come with your own dynamic, And I got to a point where I would just literally have headphones in my house all the time because all I'd hear was these cute little comments like, oh, Princess does this like this. Oh, Brian does this like this. Oh, maybe I might have to blank out that name. But anyway, so like, so-and-so does this like this. And those comments weren't like appreciated. That actually breaks you down even more. You're already in a new household. You feel alone. You can't talk to your parents because under lawyers going into court and all that stuff, you're not allowed to talk to your parents. How alone did you feel? I think I cried myself every single day for a good 2 months straight. I cried because there was no comfort. There was no one I could bounce off. There was no one I could talk to about those things. And if you do try and talk to the people in the house, they don't hear you because they're also going through their own thing. And if you do try to talk to external people, they don't even know what to say. Who's going to say what to you? And even if you do eventually go to, let's say, counselors or whatever, they're also working in this company. So the counselors are paid by the company. So who are you going to vent to that's going to hear you anyway? After that, we joined that family, and I think 2 months in, we heard that the dad in that family had cancer. From the day that we heard that the dad had cancer to the time that he passed away, it was exactly 4 months. I am navigating through just finishing grade 11, and he passed away in April, my matric year. No? Yes. Okay, so that's what's happening on the front side, right? On the back side, this company's now decided that, yes, for many years, you didn't necessarily have to know your family and so forth and so on. Now they're going to introduce everyone to their biological family as much as they can. Which red flag? Come on, let's be honest. That's a huge red flag. Because a lot of us weren't just kept away from our families for small reasons. There were big issues behind the reasons we were kept away from our families. Fine, with over time you grow and you welcome things, you welcome the circumstances, you roll with the punches, as people say. And with them, they introduced me to my biological family in December 2011. And during that stage, I met the siblings that I had, of which were 3 brothers and 1 sister, and then my mom, yeah. And my dad had passed away in 2012. So during the time I was in the system, my dad had passed away, and that's how I found out. But this is the end. And now, obviously, then from that time, now it's April, and the family decides that we made a rule that when parents sign the signature and become house parents, you're not allowed to be a single house parent. You have to be a married house parent. So when somebody passes away, you have to leave. So now you come from, it's like stepping stones. It just gets worse with each stage. And I'm in matric, and no one doesn't know that even in a household where someone is doing matric, respect that time and space. You gotta respect that time and space because it's difficult. Matric is no child's play. There's literally 6 months for you to get through a year's worth of work, pretty much. So there we are, 4 months deep, and then they introduce us to another family because this lady has to leave now because she's not fit enough to look after you guys alone. Never mind the emotional turmoil she's going through because, hello, she just lost her husband. Now you're going to tell her she can't even keep her kids. She's been with these kids. And that house mom, I'm going to be very honest with you guys, that house mom was with my other siblings. I say my other siblings so that you can separate between the houses. From the minute they arrived at that institution, so to say, and most of them were 6 years old. At this point, they're good 18, 17, 16-year-olds. So they're grown people, They've lived with this person for over 10 years. They know, they understand. Even if the dad passed away, they wouldn't have minded. They actually fought so hard so that we could keep. I even fought because I was like, the last thing I want to do is change parents. Fine. As the system goes, we get new parents, and luckily for us, the parents that we actually got after that weren't similar to the previous family where there were neighbors. These guys had come to relieve parents for us numerous times. So what would happen is when the family would go away, which now when I think of that concept, I'm like, well, that was dead on its own. How does a family go away on its own? So the biological kids and the parents would go away on holiday from the foster kids. If you're adopted into a household, your parents don't go away on holiday. Let's just talk about that. Like, at what point do you go away on holiday and leave your kids? Unless the parents alone maybe want to go honeymooning, So anyway, so they'd call other parents to come and do something called relief parenting, right? So these parents had been doing it for many years from the different households I even lived in during that time of that institution. And so when they joined our family officially, they came at I like to say a very painful season. It was too painful for everyone. These people just lost their dad because he passed away of cancer. And I'll never forget that evening being told by mom, go and say goodbye to dad. Dad is lying in bed and he's out. And at that point, you've heard so many sirens from the ambulances, from the time dad had to be fetched and the time, he couldn't walk, he couldn't do anything. Now you're finally getting to a stage where there is a little bit of peace. I don't say peace from anything else, but just like, you're finally getting back into, and then somebody else is going to be like, oh no, now you got to get new people. And you got to get used to people because, like I said, we are creatures of habits. When I put my toothbrush there, I put it there. If I don't clean the bathroom, I know, so and so will do it. And never mind that inside the house, it's also got to shift like this, When I was moved from the first family that I talked about where the daughter had the emotional breakdown, they actually split us up. My 2 younger siblings went to different houses and me and the older guy went to another house. So we're already so split, like we don't know what we're doing at this point. These guys come in and they give it their 10 out of 10. And that year, to tell you something funny, never finished with them. We actually finished the year with another family. I finished the year with another family where they had actually almost like collated all the kids into one big household. Like, they're like, oh, over time we cutting and then, now we're going to be a one big household. And they rented a property in... Winston Park. Beautiful property, don't get me wrong. Like, that was a proper blind side. It had like a tennis court, a pool, outside building. When you bring your friends, it's all sunshine and rain. When I say people live through...
foster home.
Eh?
Sorry to say, they created a foster home essentially.
Yeah. So they cut down everybody and put them all into the Ndaga household, remember?
Like it was a foster home, like where you guys were coming from.
Yeah. So now you got all these breakdowns and these emotional turmoils. Everyone's coming from different backgrounds. These guys who are coming from the other households as well, they're actually also, they've lost their parents. They've, And on top of that, just to top things off, then they cut the lady who was doing the counseling for all these kids. Because believe it or not, counselors solve problems. And the counselor spoke out and said, these things that you're doing to every single one of these kids just doesn't work. These aren't robots. You can't just work a system at the top and decide numbers will fit into these people. So that was that. And of course, by the end of that year, we were then told, once you are finished with matric, which was never the plan. We were never told when we were going in. The first lady who left me at that institution was told that I would be looked after until death do me apart with my parents. I would get parents and it would be fun and games, and until I wanted to die and pass away, those would be my parents and everyone would do. We were told that the minute you finish matric, you need to go bye-byes to your biological family. Now that sounds great, don't get me wrong. Oh my gosh, reunions. Foster family reunions are not anything that you think they are. I promise you, 10 toes. I've never met a kid who was fostered or adopted and reunited with their biological family, and it was all sunshine and rain. Yes, from time to time it happens, don't get me wrong. And I highly encourage if you can get hold of your biological family. But most of the time when it does work, I will tell you this much. Most of the time, people never move in with their biological family. They keep with their actual adopted family, but they create a relationship for their biological family. Now you are forced to just completely stay with your biological family. And it goes like, okay, you're gonna get a bursary so that you get to go to university, but you're gonna have to live with your biological family. Guys, if you've lived in the suburbs and then go and live in Lokshin, two different worlds altogether. And I'm not discriminating against anyone. I am not saying anything is wrong or right. What I'm saying is they two different worlds. No matter where you go, you can go to America, suburbs and hood life, completely different. You can go to New Zealand, same WhatsApp group. What I'm saying is the culture on its own, from suburb to environment where it's remote or whatever, is completely different. It's always been. Everybody knows this, you know? And I think I remember the first time I was trying to take a taxi. And everybody looked at me like, what's wrong with this girl? Like, what is she doing? Because no one's going to walk you through it. Unfortunately for you, sweetie, you are at the age of 22 years old and no one's got time to keep telling you, this is how you get into a taxi. Because at what age do you really do that at? At 6, at 4, you watch your parents do it through the years. You get sent to people, you do things. Now you're 22, no one's got time for you and all your weird things. So first of all, I was a house child. That's the first thing. I didn't know people could just rock up to your lawn like whenever they felt like and decide to greet you. I was like, you know, I'm not in the emotional stability state to, you know, interact with people. But I do want to talk about the emotional aspects of all of that and why I was never comfortable with even in welcoming my own family into things. It's because at that point I had depression and anxiety. Diagnosed, yes. Fully fledged, yes. And it's at its peak. And rightfully so. When I look at my life story, I'm like, it was bound to come. I have zero trust in anyone that's around me. And on top of that, to tell you a slightly more like fun story, the perpetrator that made me go into the foster system in the first place was someone I had to walk past on the street like he was a nobody. So I think that gives you a little bit of an idea of why I went to the foster system in the first place. But till today, no one is willing to acknowledge in my biological family that happened to me, because Black families don't acknowledge that type of thing. They don't worry about that type of thing. And it's actually damaging. Like it's major damage. But more than anything, you get there, you're 22, and somebody's going to tell you like, oh, okay, this is how we do things. And you try to be as respectful as possible. But at some stage, like, you know, you try and retract and be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to stay away from certain things because I'm not trying to disrespect someone else. So I would be quiet. But then comes the comments, hey, we are jail. Hey, akafuna ukuphuma. Asazi mhlawumbe akekho right. You know, and those things get to you. They get to you. And over time, it took me a very long time to eventually even find friends, to find a comfort space, to grow as a person. And the only time I think I really started growing was when I started going to university. So throughout my first year of, I went to varsity college that year, the year I got the bursary. And then the institution decided, okay, well, you're not doing well enough in school. We're leaving you. We're cutting the bursary. Find yourself the next year. Now I'm home. I'm in an environment that I don't know. I've lost my bursary, so to say. I don't even know how to get from A to B. I think I lost a good 20 kgs, proper. And if I show people, like people used to see me get so shocked. They used to be like, oh my God, that's you? And I was like, yeah, how are you doing? I'd play it off, but I'd be like, I know I was going through the things, but it was never easy. Anyway, with that being said, then then from the following year, and then family would post comments like, oh, Zomitha, angithi usuhlele ekhaya, bukudlula ontanga bakho, bayafunda manje, win. Funny enough, the cousin who actually said that to me was the one person, she came back to me. My biological mom passed away 2019, first year DUT. I went to DUT in PMB, and I was sitting at Ray's, and it was like a good sunny day. And I was like, okay, well, eventually through everything, I got NSFAS, normal NSFAS, went to DUT, registered, went, and my mom wished me well, and I went, and it was somewhere in August. I think it was the 25th of August on the day. And I woke up at Rez, and I don't know where all these people are messaging me. How, Jan, princess? And like I said to you, from the get-go, the relationship was always hostile. No one talks to you. Wingani umlungu, awusazi isiZulu, wazi isingisi nje wena, yinto esoyenza ngawe. You know, all those type of comments. So you'd be like, what am I going to interact with you when you're already passing those type of comments? And people would come straight to you. Hey, wena ngani? Yinje inkinga yakho? And you'd be like, Today, if I tell you those cousins how they treat me, because I've got a job, I fixed my life, and I kept quiet. And the one thing I can vouch for is that I'm a silent mover. My mom said to me, and this is my biological mom, she said to me, Mtanam, ngebakuthande bonke abantu. Thulala, went into yakho. And that's exactly what I did. Went to university. And she said to me, first week there, she phoned me. She goes, oh yeah, you remember that cousin that said uzomit? Bela izolek buz. And she was like, I'm glad you did what you did. Ngamtshela ngathi cha, Ntombenhle usesevasithi, ayikho into ozoyenza. Many months later, my mom passed away. And the way I found out was on a WhatsApp status. It wasn't even through somebody being like, oh, hey, princess. No, somebody posted, oh, RIP, my aunt. And I was like, oh, I'm at Ray's writing an assignment at that point. I'm going through my WhatsApp, and there it is. And she got hit by a car. So it was a freak accident. She never got sick or anything. She was a fully healthy person. She was good. She was really good, actually. So that's that happening. So within the years that I'm now developing a relationship with my biological family, and my mom passes away. My dad already passed away. So I'm back to the status of orphan, which is what I've lived under my whole life anyways. But you soldier on. I finished 2022 in record time. So I did my diploma in HR, 3 years, finished. Walking across the stage was difficult, I won't lie, because hello, the person who I started this adventure with is no longer there. My white mom was there, front row, and she was really amazing. I'm not gonna lie, I will give 10 toes. Funny enough, you guys are probably wondering which part of this story was this mom from. The lady that I told you about lost her husband through cancer is the one person that I lived with that has made sure. Okay, I lie. There's two of them. The first one right at the beginning, but this one, she's been there, through thick and thin. She has been my soldier, my shoulder to cry on whenever I needed anything, everything. So it's ironic that they actually kicked her out back then, but she decided I'm not going anywhere. She stayed in our lives, all of us. And there were 10 of us kids at that stage. Imagine, there's 10 of us kids at that stage, and every single one of us, she's made a point. Every birthday, every Christmas, we are together. If you know me, you know my Instagram stories, you know my Facebook, you know everything I post about my family. I love my family to bits. I call them my white family just to differentiate for people to understand what I'm talking about, which family. Because my biological family, I never post about them because there's really not a lot of commonality there. And it's been a process, it's been seasons, but what I really want you guys to get out of this is that with everyone who's been in every single one of those families, we are dealing with a lot. And it's taken me years to sit down and be able to talk about what I'm talking about today. And And like I say, there's been stages where you just cry for a week and you're like, oh my God. And that's the only way I got through anything. Oh my God. And if you understand that, you'll be okay, you know? Because a lot of people would be 10 toes deep into drugs, alcohol, any way you can think of. And I just want to say, if you are going through any one of these stages, stay strong. It's not easy, but you'll be okay. So yeah, but you will get through it. I live by that. And it's okay. Anyway, so with that being said, I just want to say, if you're going through anything, just know you're never alone. That's the first thing. We're creating communities here. And that's what it's about. It's about communities. It's about soldiering on. This is God, guys. And He's working through all of our lives. And if you are going to adopt, please, please pray about it. And if you're not Christian or anything like that, like, think, go for assessments, ask people around you, do you think we are emotionally ready? Because I think sometimes even friends or family can tell you things, and some of the conversations will be difficult, but they'll be worth it. I promise you, they'll be so worth it. There's memories I'll never take away from, I'd never replace from all those families that I went through. So I live by that. But I do want to say that if I'm leaving something behind on this couch, it's that emotional breakthrough that I went through those years. And if it's one thing I'm taking away, is it's something I'm moving forward with, and I'm going to do, is like a mantra. A mantra is like something that you live by, is that thank you, God, for everything that you've given me. Please give me the wisdom to keep it, and please give me the strength to keep going. Couch surfing. Let's go.